Hi guys. Today we're going to be talking about just general ideas when you are looking at writing a great short story. There are two general rules that I really want you to be able to focus in on. Number one, in a short story, we always show, we never tell. So what that means is that as you're going through and you're writing your story, it's better to have a character experience something or to have a conversation with somebody rather than saying specifically that something's happening in the story. The second thing is to be brief and powerful. Short stories are incredible because they pack a lot of communication into a very small amount of space. The shorter and more powerful your story is, the better off you're going to be. When it comes to the theme of your story, really want you to think about how you're going to develop this. One of the things that really has a lot of students struggle is they feel like they need to get really preachy with their theme. What you want to do is you want to let the theme grow out of the story so that readers feel like they've learned it for themselves. You should never have to directly say what the moral of the story is. You want to make sure the theme is obvious, though, by how your characters change. It's through their interactions with setting, with the conflict, and with each other that you'll be able to show how the characters are changing and ultimately what they are learning. The plot of your story, or in the plot of your story, the main character should win or lose at least partly on their own and not just be rescued by someone or something else. You really want to think about how you are doing this in your story because it's really going to be important that things don't feel abrupt. You don't want to just have someone all of a sudden come swoop in and make everything better, or on the contrary, swoop in and make everything worse. You want it to unfold logically. You also want to make sure that the main character is learning or growing as they try and solve their problem, because that's how you develop your theme. Also, in your plot, the conflict should get more and more tense or exciting as the story builds. The tension should reach a high point or a climax near the end of the story and then ease off. The biggest thing that I see with students is that you need to take your time with the conflict and do not rush the climax. Just like we practiced when we were making our most intense moments, it's not about making that long, but it's about really taking the time to develop it and making sure that your audience is going to see and is going to feel and is going to feel like they're experiencing everything that's happening during that climax. If there is one part of the story that is the most important to spend the most amount of time on, it's going to be your climax and then how that conflict builds up to the climax. Lastly, a novel can have several conflicts, but a short story should only have one. Because of our original rule that we need to be brief and powerful, you don't have the space or the time for more than one conflict to be able to develop it well. You need to focus in and have that be what you're working on. When you look at your story structure, at the very beginning of your story, you really want to jump straight into the action. And at the end, you want to wind up the story quickly. A lot of students I see struggle because they are trying to spend all this time setting up the context for their audience in terms of what their main character is doing, what their past has been, but helping the audience understands the circumstances your character finds them in is a matter of artfully including details throughout the story, not in a long introduction. You are always going to be better off jumping straight into the action than you are going to be adding a really long backstory or anything like that. The second thing about your story structure is you're really going to need to decide whether you're going to write in the present or the past tense. Writing in the past tense means that the story has already happened, and that's how the majority of stories are written. Writing in the present tense is a lot more difficult, and it's as if the story is happening right now. No matter what, you need to decide what's going to be best for you and your story and your characters and stick to it. When it comes to your characters, you really want to think about how you're developing them as well. When we talk about artfully including details, this is building characterization is a great way to do that. You also have notes in your element of a short story notes with all sorts of different ways that we develop characters. But when you think about specifically your main character, it should be somebody that readers can feel something in common with, and it should be somebody that they could potentially care about. You really want to build that relationship between your main character and your audience. Secondly, the main character should have at least one flaw or weakness. It doesn't do you any good to have a perfect character because they're not very interesting. They're also harder to feel something in common with or care about, and they don't have anything to learn, so it's really hard to develop your theme. In the same way that there should be flaws in your main character, there should also be at least one good thing about the bad guy. You really want to make sure that as you're going through and developing your story, that your readers feel some of the tension that your characters are going to be feeling too. And just like in real life, where not everybody is all bad or all good, you want to make sure that that feels the same in your story. When it comes to your setting, you really want to be sure that your setting is believable. Like we've talked about from the beginning, you need to make sure that your story feels real. The more your audience feels like they understand and can see and feel the setting, the better off your story is going to be. Your setting needs to be understandable, regardless if you're making up different things, if it's fantastical in any way, shape, or form. Whatever's going on in the story should feel like it could actually happen. You also want to be incredibly specific in the details you include and allow the audience to make inferences about different aspects of the setting. For instance, weather is an easy way to allow an audience to make inferences. So when a character is zipping up a coat, I automatically know that it's cool outside and we're potentially looking at fall or winter rather than just directly saying what the season is. Last but not least, I really want you to think about your style and tone. You want to use language that feels right for the story, but whenever you can, you want to use actions and speech to let readers know what's happening. It goes back to that original rule of show, don't tell. You want for readers to experience the story, not just have it told to them. You also want to give speech in direct quotes. For example, putting in quotes, go away, and having somebody shouting at somebody else instead of an indirect quote like, she told him to go away. You want to make it feel like it's happening. And then lastly, you always want to use the best possible word. You want to be really intentional and you want to choose the one that is the closest to your meaning, sounds best, and creates the clearest image. If you can't think of the right one, you can use a thesaurus. And with anything, you can always make comments to come back to these things later. As you are getting ready to jump in, I really want you to relax and let your creative juices flow and think about all of these different things that we just talked about. Best of luck.